Okay, the conversation's open, friends and family. You guys can start talking about, what I did to do is share with us some of your stories, ask questions, whatever you'd like. And I'm going to invite you to try to keep it to a couple minute segments and raise a question. Or if you have a story to share or a compliment to share, we will be able to take these little sound bites and use them to put through the I Change Justice podcast of the past. We do have a large project where we need to be funded. This whole thing is about funding for the Restore Life Center. We need a lot of money. We don't have to buy new facilities. What we want to do is we want to set up our offices, our spaces, so we can educate and host meetings, the ways we can take care of people. We typically are not supported by government systems because it's economically, and we'll talk about this later, it's economically not useful for us to take people out of the system. And Ilona's going to talk about that. When the system is set up to need people to go into the system in order for the government systems to get more funding. And so it's really, our whole world has been turned upside down. We're going to talk about it over the next few days. And we need funding, in fact, in Whatcom County, but everyone else that's going to present, we're going to have presenters from Homes Now, Not Later, a tiny home village. We're going to have people who are part of the Serenity Outreach Services who are doing emergency first aid type work in the bushes and where the what I call the Civic refugees are living. We're going to talk with Bridge to Services, who also is helping a lot to bring stuff from the faith-based communities, from a lot of our other nonprofit groups who are all volunteers to help people who are living in below the poverty line and in the trees and bushes of our community homeless. We have a large problem, just like they have down in Seattle, Los Angeles, Portland. We're going to have people from all over the place. And Karen Ball, I know that you are on the call here. You're going to be one of our presenters in the next few days, and I welcome you. You are from San Antonio, Texas. Do you want to speak about what you're going to talk about in the next couple of days? And then we need to open it. I forgot. We need to open it up for questions. So know that all of you will have a chance to speak. But since I called on Karen, you start.
All right, thank you, Joy. Largely what I'm going to be talking about is the compassionate city movement that is happening across the United States and worldwide. So San Antonio is one of 5 compassionate cities in the state of Texas. And we are on a movement to have Texas actually declared a compassionate state. We've got a lot of work to do to make that happen. But what I'm largely here to share is kind of the grassroots movement within San Antonio and how we came to be a compassionate city, or at least recognized officially as a compassionate city. And I'll be sharing some websites that can, give you lots of information of how you might be able to set up a compassionate city in Bellingham.
Well, and we also want you to be able to, in fact, didn't I just interview you on I Change Justice?
You did.
So in the last week or so, actually last Thursday, you were just interviewed and you were talking about the fact that Karen comes from a criminal justice education background. You tell us you've got your master's and you've done a lot of work in alternatives anyway. You can go look, people can go listen to the I Change Justice, but talk about how you're actually working with me and us here and a lot of us to pioneer changes. So share why you're involved in helping us here today.
One of the reasons I'm involved is when I did do my undergraduate and my master's study in criminal justice, I found that the system wasn't helping people. In fact, it was making it worse. And so I focused all of my intention then on what alternatives could we do to actually address root causes that were leading people into connection with the criminal justice system. And I looked at all the levels, that interaction with the police, the interaction with the courts, and the interaction with the corrections facility. I also have training in community organizing and have worked for a number of nonprofit organizations that provide social services and human services to that population that gets caught up in the criminal justice system a lot. So it was really intriguing to me that Bellingham has this restorative community that's trying to do some of the things that I've had connection with in the past. And then I'm really excited with the Intentional Change Network that Joy is working on, because I'd like to contribute to how the public sees involvement in community engagement. We tend to think of democracy, if we're not an elected official, as a spectator sport. Far from it. We all need to take responsibility and get involved in our communities. And so part of the landscape that Joy has already laid out for this week is looking at how systems, in a sense, encourage us not to be engaged. And how can we recognize that, claim power, and become engaged in a way that does not operate in the same oppressive manner as some of our systems.
So thank you so much, Karen. I also want to note that Karen is highly aware of the deep layers of trauma, because her city is located close to Uvalde, Oregon, where Uvalde, Texas.
Yes.
And also close to Austin and San Antonio. I mean, there's been a lot of news out of Texas. So you are very aware of what's going on with politics. And we will have another person presenting in the next couple of days who's done some research into how the political system actually, as a dual system, creates a monopoly.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it very difficult for anybody in the political system to be able to help anybody else. So we're actually hamstrung, not just individually, we're also hamstrung economically, and then we're hamstrung governmentally, and then politically. And it's crazy to have to deal with all this when we're dealing with survival issues on the planet right at the moment. So thank you, Karen, for joining us. And someone just told me they had to leave. I was looking at the chat. Do you want to say anything before you have to sign off? Or did she already go? And if not, anybody else anybody else who wants to speak, put your hand up. And if you understand the chat room rules, if you raise your hand, I'll know who wants to speak and say something. Go for it, Carol. Does Eva, are you, I think it was Eva that was checking out. Do you want to say something before you sign off? I think in the chat room, what she said is she'll be joining us on some of the other episodes. So that's terrific. Welcome when you can come back, Eva. Go ahead, Carol Sue.
Good morning, everybody. And hello, Joy. Will the real Ilona Crone please step up? Thank you. I just wanted to say something that I caught that you said, that I had never really thought of the gravity of the location where this is, with I-5 going up there, which, you know, is a military road. The interstate roads are military roads just to transport the military and to perpetuate their agenda. So the fact that this is where it is located, and between Canada and the US, where they are basically building a slave factory. And to be able to bring them in from both sides. And this is, it's so dangerous. I really got the gravity of it just this morning when you mentioned that about I-5, and the only one that it's temperate weather all the way from one end to the other.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'm working on when we are having these conversations is not necessarily to use trigger words, because I've really learned about that. The people who are building the prison or the jail or a mass incarceration facility or a slave factory. It depends on point of view as to how we use those words, you know. A long time ago, these were called enclosures, and these were ways that you herded in the agriculture industry. You herded people into these farming enclosures around agricultural areas, and then eventually people were genocided from those. So it depends on what culture and what reason and where you're at and who's talking about it as to how we use it, which is one of the reasons that tomorrow I'm going to be speaking, and we're really going to speak a lot on Wednesday morning about looking at the words we use based on the part of the world we're in, the world that you're in the Southern Hemisphere versus the Northern Hemisphere, the Eastern and the Western Hemisphere. You know, were you born in Germany in the 50s, or were you born in Seattle in the 50s, or New York City in the 50s? These things are all different. And so trying to have this conversation is like trying to herd a bunch of lions around the room. So it's going to be very fun to discover what we're learning. Come on in. We have another guest joining us. Have a seat anywhere you wish. So it's delightful. Thank you so much for Carol Sue for pointing that out. I actually had not heard. I knew it was a civil defense highway. I had not actually thought about it as a military highway, but that is what it is, in fact. And we do see military equipment going up and down the highway. And where they wanted to build this huge facility in Whatcom County, it's 40 acres. It's 5 minutes from the airport. I mean, just across the road, literally, you can put people on planes to go anywhere you want. It's 10 minutes from waterfront and deep water ports. It's 15 minutes from the Canadian border. It's 10 minutes. I mean, it's like, and we got a railroad spur going right into that property.
Exactly. And probably a helicopter thing and incinerators.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got it all for the perfect concentration camp, which is the other.
And I don't want to go into more fear mongering around that.
No. But the fact that you say the military is bringing stuff up there, they were also doing that when they were doing the Walmarts and the barracks, and the GIs, the young GIs thought they were going to war. They're in this caravan taking this stuff to create this system at Walmart, and they didn't realize what they were putting together. You know, they just thought they were getting ready to go to war.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth paying attention to as a community, because the goal here has been, according to the story as advertised, using your words, Alona, the story is advertised, it's all for public safety. And it's for our public safety, except it's our children who are being incarcerated in those facilities. It's our children who, once they get arrested or they have a problem, are committing suicide right now in our communities. I just experienced the fact that within my circle of influence in Whatcom County, which is sort of big, but it's my personal influence, where 3 suicides have happened in the last couple of weeks to people who are only 1 person away from me. That's pretty significant. So we need to be looking at what's actually happening to people because of the emergency provisions of the past 2 years, the COVID crisis, the bullying of the homeless, the the emergency declarations, and how is that changing everything? So who else is ready to speak that's on the call? Anybody in the room or wants to say something? Oh, do you want to introduce yourself? You don't have to, but you're welcome to.
I don't know if I'm very important to this.
Come on over and put your face in. Okay, you don't have to. You can do it when you're ready. One of the things
came to learn. I want to.
You came to learn.
This level.
Yep.
I know that on the ground you can't start. I don't know this level of stuff.
Welcome.
I
Welcome
know what you're
aboard.
saying is true.
Yeah, and you will be working with us a little bit on Friday morning, 10 City Talks, building the bridges across the gaps. The woman who's speaking has been very active, delivering boots on the ground services to people who are dealing with flood trauma. Last season, we were dealing with a lot of people who were homeless, who are what I'm calling civic refugees, people who are being hazed around the community because they have no place to go. They don't have a home, they don't have money, they're scared of going into some of the certain encampment systems. You know, there's a lot of issues going on right now, so she's going to be able to speak.
I'm wondering, was her comment picked up by the mic?
I think it was picked up as good as it's going to be.
Okay.
Who else would like to speak? I saw you nodding your head a bunch, Mel, and you're new to this area. Are you willing to speak out on this conference call?
Well, I'm appreciating the fact that it's happening.
Uh-huh.
I guess part of it I always want to know is if the world were as you thought it should be, what would you have done to make it that?
Exactly what we're doing right here, right now. We have to have local community conversations in little pods, in groups, in neighborhoods, in cities, not to be rebellious, not to arm ourselves to the teeth to fight back against whatever. It's to actually build what I grew up with. You know, in the 1970s, when I left home at 18, I had 10 years of conditioning in my community. I was in 4-H. I was involved in a newspaper that I was editing and working with. I was writing news. I was busy in my community. I belonged to all kinds of 4-H clubs and sports clubs and activism. And all of my neighbors were involved in taking care of emergencies. When the storm came in and it was 20 below zero, everybody knew that the telephones could go out. The power obviously was going to go out. And we needed to make certain that everybody had heat, we had food, we were protected. And if we were injured, we needed a way to get to town. So we had telephone trees. We had neighbors that were hooked up together. And even if you hated each other during the summer and you had war games going on politically and people were mad, it didn't matter. When the storm came in, all that stuff was set aside and you showed up and you went to the neighbor and you made sure they were safe. You made sure they had food and water, and you made sure that people knew where to go to get help.
If they didn't come to your house first.
If they didn't come to your house first, absolutely. And so it was never about whether the government was going to save us or fix us or do anything. It wasn't about calling 911. We didn't even have the 911 calls in those days. Okay. In fact, one of the things that I've discovered in the last 10 years, well, actually in 2018, I did a study in Whatcom County to figure out why people who were arrested ended up dealing with deep psychological issues. What happened to people who got arrested? Because I found out nobody really in the nation that I couldn't find any studies on what happens to people when they get arrested. And I did a study, and it's published. It's on the Restorative Community Coalition's website. It's called Blind Spots in Whatcom County Jail Trauma. And in that chart, what I discovered is that out of 79 people that I interviewed, 53 of them were people who had been arrested. 26 were people who were the loved ones who called in to get help for their person who was in trouble. They called to get help. They called 911 because they believed that if they called 911, help was going to come. What I did not know until I did the interviews, I didn't know what I was getting into. I had no idea. I was just asking questions. And people trusted me to talk to me because they knew that for the last decade, we have been helping people dealing with the jail and justice system. In fact, 53 of those people I interviewed were people we'd helped. And the only reason they were willing to go into the deep trauma of the experience is because I told them, we're not going to go in and re-traumatize you. What I want to do is find out from you how we could change the system. You went through it. It was horrible for you. I know that. So just breathe, and we'll take breaks whenever you need to. If you need to go out and have a smoke, if you need to drink water, if you need to cancel the session and come back, whatever it takes. But tell me what happened to you, and tell me what happened before the arrest and the incarceration happened. And what could we have done, or what could you have done, or what would you have done differently if you were the person running the system, or what would you tell your family? How would you handle it? What's up about that? And what I discovered is that when 911 came into existence, suddenly we had recordings, we had records, we had telecommunications, we had technology, and technology, while it was more efficient and people loved it on one hand, the back end of that is that now everybody who works in 911 is vulnerable. They're vulnerable to lawsuits, they're vulnerable to making mistakes, they're vulnerable to the costs, they're vulnerable to whether they got people there on time, and all of a sudden, the very people who were helping us were then vulnerable to technical liability. That's it, liability and risk. Actually, Alona's going to be talking about this, because the big problem with our economy and our legal and justice systems and our whole system is that people are now afraid of the liability. And because they're afraid of the liability, they won't.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you want to say something? Yeah.
This is good stuff.
Yeah, this is
Like
what we're talking about.
This is real life stuff right here. Yeah.
This is real life
Yeah.
stuff, and this makes it difficult to show up as a 911 responder. It makes it difficult for the judges and the prosecutors and the people working in the court systems. It makes it difficult for everybody working in mental health. It makes it difficult for everybody working in the media. So we've actually created a system that is imploding on itself.
Yeah.
And that's what I discovered from doing that study. And that study, what it does is it creates compound post-traumatic stress disorder. I actually had to go when I listened to those 79 people talk and tell me what they did. I was drawing maps, and I'll show them tomorrow, but they're diagrams. They're big, ugly, scratched all over diagrams, because I was trying to listen without judgment to what was happening. And at the end of it, I just sat back. I actually called a mental health counselor to help me diagram it for me. Right? And I said, how do I talk about this? This is so complex and it's so traumatizing. How do I even make these charts?
You're just the interviewer.
And I was
Yeah.
just the interviewer.
How to
Yeah.
unpack it.
And
Unpack it.
how to
Actually
unpack
in
the
layman's
story.
terms, so that we can go in and we can fill in those gaps for real.
Yeah. Speak up. Say that again. How do we, no, speak
I
up so
don't-
you're
I
well
don't
heard.
know.
No,
I'm just saying, what you're saying is so true. I can't stay quiet, because it is the real life situation. Like I have been in a situation with my daughter where she was victimized to the point where in school, where she was going to be like she was hanged. You know?
Uh-huh.
And so, but we did all the right steps as parents and as family and all that, but it was because of the school system not knowing. So I want to make sure that gets in there.
Yeah.
We're all duct taped up. You know what I mean? The school
Yes.
system, even if they really want to be there for youth, if they want to be there for adults or whatever, wherever you want to take that to, they can't. The whole system can't. It's not the people. It's the system has been
Yes.
created so that we're all duct taped.
Duct taped,
You
if
know?
not handcuffed.
Yeah,
We are
well-
duct taped.
Well,
And
if you're not handcuffed, then you're duct taped, because you can't talk. Because
Yeah.
you don't know how to unpack it. Even if you are, you know, the kind of parent I am, where I'm out there, no, you're not going to expel her, you could suspend her. No, you're not going to send her to juvie. She can go to a treatment center. You know, if a parent isn't, I don't know what it is, but if you're not-
informed.
or I wasn't even informed, I was just pissed off. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was too pissed. There's
Yeah.
no way you're gonna take my girl and take her to juvie, because that's just
You're
going
not
to-
allowed.
That's just gonna escalate
Yeah.
the situation. There's not gonna be any solution. Not that treatment centers are gonna solve anything, but at least I can go in and I can say, or I thought I could. But then you get them into treatment centers and then the parents are excluded.
Yeah.
And they cannot say anything. And then I learned that's not even an answer. There
Right.
is no answer. However, there is what we're doing right now. The mess, the messy coming together where, like Mel was saying, like, so what do you want to do? What would you do different? We need to be asking those questions. We
Yep.
need to be working together right now. I don't even know who you are. I don't know who these people are. I don't even know nothing. All I know is that
You were invited.
that I was, you know,
I'm so
told
glad
about
you're
it
here.
last week. Do you know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
and it's like, we have to do this messy talking of different levels of people that have different knowledge. of things, of information, to figure out how as a community, internationally, we can come together and change the systems that are broken. There's no other way to go about it.
There is no other way. And this is true internationally, it's true locally, and this
Yeah,
is one of the
all the
biggest
levels.
problem we have. People think that the county council or the city council should be fixing this, and yet the city council is controlled by Open Public Meetings Acts.
Yeah.
And they're controlled by the way the agenda works. And they're controlled by 3-minute rules, and they're controlled by all these things. And so the open conversations that we have to have as elders, that we have to have as mothers and parents and leaders and corporate leaders, our CEOs. The biggest problem that I found from doing that 911 survey, and I didn't know it was a 911 survey. When I was just asking what happened to people and what happened before that. And then I realized that at 911, an incident report is filed. As soon as the incident report was filed, and then as soon as you get arrested, another incident report, as soon as you get charged, another piece of paper is filed. Each one of those things in the economic system becomes a financial surety type instrument, and these things become municipal assets to the corporation. And the corporation, even if you're innocent, those assets, those documents are filed in bundles, and they become part of this financial apparatus. We're not going to go into a lot of those details because most people, that's going to be above their head. I mean, it was way above my head. And when I first heard it, I was aghast. I couldn't believe that you were then, when she talked about being this slave society thing, that is what happens. You become a financial asset. As a financial asset, you get bundled just like real estate stuff, and then you're traded on the commercial markets, and it's a trip, but it doesn't matter. We don't have to understand that. What we have to do is figure out how to pivot out of that. That's what we're doing today. Yes, Alona, thank you.
Yeah, I would just like to say the key point in all this is that within the system, everyone is playing according to prefabricated roles. So we can't actually act as a human being, and that is why the system can never provide the answer. We need to start talking again from human being to human being, and actually with an open heart and compassion. And then around the system, we'll be building the solutions. And then the system will adapt or it will disappear because it's not going to help anyone.
And as the system disappears, it's not violence that's going to take the system out. It's lack of funding. It's lack of human support. It's the fact that we choose to put our money in a different place. We choose as taxpayers, we choose as social activists, we choose as individuals, and we choose as companies. Because the problem we have when the emergency, this is the last thing I want to say, and then I'm going to invite some other people to talk. But one of the things I discovered over the last 2 years, okay, I ran for Whatcom County Sheriff in 2019. And that's a trip.
After she ran for county executive in 2015 to educate the public.
I was on a research mission, okay? When I say I've gone into a deep dive into the systems to understand what's wrong, it's because I know that 98% of the people that I know are decent human beings trying to do the right thing. And we make mistakes because we're mistaught or we mistrained or we're whatever, we make mistakes. But most people are goodwill. Most people are good-hearted. Most people want to help. Our inclination when we're first born, when we're first incubated in our little mama's bellies, all of this is we are divinely intelligent people who grow and we trust. And you know what? That's why we get in all these pickles, because we trust whoever our leaders are. And we believe our leaders. Well, if our leaders are running us off the cliff because they were trained and they were taught how to do it according to a system that doesn't work, but they're enforcing the system, then we're all screwed up. So the point is, I ran for sheriff in Whatcom County in 2019 on purpose because I could not figure out why, after our community in 2015 and 2017 voted against passing a jail tax, our county was still pushing to build a jail. We didn't need a jail. We'd already proven that we could reduce the occupancy load. We'd already proven where the mismanagement was. We'd already proven that there was no need for all this stuff. And yet our county was still pushing a jail. You know why I knew that? Because I found out that they were going to hire another jail building contractor to plan to convince the county officials to build this jail anyway. Because what they needed was money to fund the different cities. Listen to this. They needed money to fund the different cities because the different cities were running out of money because Amazon.com had started running an economic system that used the internet to buy and sell products. Plus, we had created big box stores that had all moved into the city of Bellingham. So all the sales tax that was coming into our systems was being distributed through the city of Bellingham, and our small cities weren't getting funded. So we actually had a tax equity problem and we had a tax distribution problem. So it meant that all the mayors in our cities were vulnerable to the city of Bellingham, and they were vulnerable to the sheriff and the CEO and the corporate contractors and the CEOs who ran the corporate government of Whatcom County. I had never seen that before.
Right.
The prosecutor is a CEO, the executive is a CEO, and the sheriff is a CEO. And our county has become a corporation that runs on sales tax, property tax, and the taxes that come in, or the contractors and the contracts that are written. So our county is a corporation. It's doing business with other corporations.
Absolutely.
So it was a trip. That's why I ran for sheriff. I want to understand how in the heck that actually worked. And guess what? When you run for sheriff, people talk to you because they don't know whether you're going to win or not. Now, I didn't win. I only got I think I got 34,000 votes or something. Maybe it was 21,000. I don't know. It was a lot of votes. Now think about that. I'm a woman. I'm 65 years old. I am not a cop. I was running on a peace officer ticket under a little tiny loophole in the laws that allowed me to run when I wasn't an officer, because the job is the chief executive officer. It's a business role. So I ran, and guess what? I learned a whole bunch. And it changed how I saw everything in the world. And that's why we're doing these community regeneration conversations, and we're talking to real people about real stuff, how to change it without triggering a bunch of war, because I'm not interested in that, and most people don't want that. Mel, it looks to me like you were wanting to say something. You want to speak?
No, I appreciate the sharing. I think that's right.
You actually asked a question.
I know I did. and part of that, are you frozen or is it, you hearing me? Okay. It seemed like you were frozen for a second.
You're frozen. Yeah, can you try? I'm gonna
You are both not frozen on my end.
okay, then go for it, Mel.
No, I appreciate that. I think one of the realities is the system works. And so, and
The system.
because most of us are trying we get caught in the game of trying to thinking that we are solving or changing the system, when the fact of the matter is the only way to change the system is to have a different system.
Yeah.
And that is for me, and this is part of what I'm not going to get. We'll go later in the week, you know, especially when we get back to Dr. Discovery, some of the other dynamics. I'm appreciating and hearing some good things in terms of you as human beings and some of your understandings. But you know, we live in a four-dimensional kind of world operating, and so it's not just local. It's absolutely it's local, and it's kind of the larger layers of national. But we also have moved to a level, the fourth dimension, in terms of it's a world culture of power and dominance. And the framework for that is in place in various forms, but it's the United States You can't solve the problems that we're talking about without dealing with and understanding and making a commitment to eliminating the trauma of white primacy, because we are structured, and that is its natural state of being. There is no democracy. We need to quit using that language. We are not a democracy, and we're not a representative republic. We're a restricted covenant of white primacy that structured the nation and has brainwashed all of us in the consciousness of a perspective and worldview that's not based in reality. It's become something that we all believe the normal form of relationship that keeps us from having common humanity, to be able to build a collective coalition, a collaborative effort of transforming the dominance, privacy, and primacy into being a collective one of survival, well-being, and wholeness for all of us. And so I'm saying that I know you can't, that's kind of what I said, where you're trying to go. And so we're trying to talk about a different worldview, a different mindset, because that's what has to happen. But if you're also, that only becomes real on the ground in terms of it has to happen in our cities, it has to happen in our neighborhoods, it has to happen in those places. But I think we have to have a frame. It's like we talk about, I guess I've committed my life to trying to create communities of beloved community and developing positive transformative change, understandings of kiss and kick. We have to know how to kiss, and we have to know how to kick. Those strategies inside and external kind of developmental processes and understandings that can shape us and help us begin to see how to make those things applicable in the spaces and places we live in, we work in, and we grow in. So what you're doing is critically important. I want to say that. I also want to know who's part of this trying to create the Whatcom County or the whatever county. Are we going to, as we created an unrepresentative democracy, what's the representative groupness, who's in this conversation to help us have a holistic understanding how we grow into it? So I'm not being critical, I'm just being analytical at this point, asking some questions and seeing, and so who's at the table, who's not at the table?
We're at the table right here, right now. So let me say that. We are just human beings, and we actually are men and women of an earth. So there is the larger conversation as well, the quantum physics or the understanding of the quantum field, because the thing is that in the 21st century, we now know stuff about how the world works in a very different way than they knew when civilization was being created a couple thousand years ago. And I'm going to challenge one more word, and I'm going to end up doing this throughout our whole five days, because words we use can be triggering. And simply saying that is a white supremacy system is a challenge, when what actually happens back then was the word civil. I'm going to try to get Stephen Newcomb on here to talk about the origin of the word civil. It came from a white European culture at the time, but the word civil itself is a supremacist conversation, and it is English. So the word itself at its root word created a problem. And so we blamed it on white people, but we also had problems as civilization was changing from an agricultural industry to a more, heck, I've studied now with people who reminded me that the word investment.
Yep.
Who thinks about that? I never thought about investments. Investments are just investments. It never occurred to me that investments came from the castles, from the investments that held the castle enclosure together, and it helped the people who were inside the castle were safe then from, that's the kings and the queens and the lords or whoever owned the castle, kept them safe from the people who were out of the castle, the outsiders. Okay. And they were the people who were running the markets. And then the people who traded between the inside and the outside were the other people. And so it wasn't about necessarily a race. It was the people who had privilege on either side of the fence.
And
So
that's
one of the
true.
things, yeah, so one of the things that
But
we
I did
are
not
going
use
to-
the word white supremacy. I did not use,
well, what word did you use? White?
I said white primacy.
Okay, white primacy. I got that.
And so the issue would be, do you know what I mean by that, or what I'm talking about?
I'd love,
Right.
I would, okay.
I'm not disagreeing. The issue is we're talking about dominance, talk about dominating cultures. And
We're
in
going to be
different
talking,
ways and different times and different cultures. Oppression is a universal. The
I
issue, and unless we begin to see the world in terms of the varieties of oppressions and their different
yes.
settings and places.
So
And-
that so Mel,
Wait a minute, let's go. I'm not trying, I'm simply saying I'm appreciating you and I'm hearing you.
oh God, I'm
And-
loving it. Can you join us on Wednesday morning at
I
9
plan to
o'clock,
do.
at 10
I
o'clock?
plan to do it.
Okay, would you, okay, just listen to my invitation for a minute. I would love to invite you to put together 10 to 15 minutes to literally talk about what you're talking about right now. I'm going to have a couple other people come on. I did a talk called Standing Up with Power to Humanity Rising that you could look up on my YouTube channel called Joy. What is it? Joy Thinks at Joy Talk, host of Joy Talks. Look it up on YouTube and watch the Standing Up with Power. And because I'm talking about that. And then a couple episodes later, I interview a fellow called Paul Magid, and he's spent his life diagramming cultural and social and economic history. And he's a Sephardic Jew. And he did he's got a website out called thedoctrineofdiscoveries.org. I'm also going to be bringing in a fellow, whether it's on that day or another day, by the name of Steve Newcomb. He wrote a book called Pagans in the Promised Land, and he was one of the primary producers of a documentary called The Doctrine of Discoveries. And it's powerful. You can go watch both of those. And these are the people who have been talking to me about how this language and this culture and this entire structure came from thousands of years ago, and then it boiled down. But the significance, and I will speak about it, is that when the papal bulls were written and they were transferred across the seas, it absolutely created a commercial system different from just the legal system. It created admiralty law. It created trade laws so that humans could be owned and they could be traded, and some people could become slaves. And then it created this whole hierarchical economic system that we're still following today. So we will be unpacking that over the next few days. And I would love to have you be one of the presenters, because it's clear that you've done some research into this, and I'd welcome your conversation.
But I actually have a lot of stuff. I'm gonna try and I plan to be there Wednesday. I'm trying to listen to these conversations. What I'm really trying to do for myself, I'm a change agent, and that's what I do. And so part of what I'm trying to do is to be here where you're coming from and experience what's going on here. And I happen to know, I did it nationally. I coordinated our anti-racism, anti-oppression work for Unitarian Universalists for 20-some years, and have done a lot of other things that I've worked with in terms of change agency. And part of what I'm telling you is I'm appreciating what you're doing.
Thank you so much. And Castro, do you want to speak? And I know you could speak for 1,000 hours. So give us a 3 to 5 minute piece about where you're coming in from and why this matters to you.
It's just from trial and error. You know what I'm saying? I think that's where we all get our honest gifts from, is because we have a desire in our heart as humanity, as human people, right? Few people from the beginning, right? We have a desire to ascend, to do something better, no matter what, to get better, right? You know what I mean? And so we encounter these challenges, and these challenges are truly our servants, You know what I mean? So these challenges, what we're talking about, the challenge for us is to bring people together. You know what I'm saying? And try unity. This is where I come from right now. And right here, this is the project that we've been working on. And this is the community that we need. We need to, you know, build and try unity and link arms with like minds, because what we're developing is on the project side of from the 6th region of the African Union. You know what I mean? And that already is a place recognized in the world. You know what I mean? But there's not appropriation righteously yet. But there's not a people organized together to represent that yet. And so what we're developing is a sovereign protocol to establish Waga, which is value, you know what I'm saying? And to live off of value, because we all have these skills and we're going to develop a society, you know what I'm saying? And like, we have a lot of things that we're working on. I'm just saying, this is where we're coming from. We're coming from the NFT and the blockchain official minting of purpose, like creating a sovereign society, you know what I'm saying? Like, and we have to tether it to a piece of land, and that's available. And we're doing our due diligence to figure it out and how to put it together in the right piece. You know what I mean? And it's always just like linking with like minds. More heads is more value to the project. You know what I mean? And so I just bring that as an offering forth. You know what I mean? Because try unity. When you see my Facebook page and you hashtag try unity, that's what it means. We got to try unity together. You know what I mean? Because it's more of us than them. You know what I mean? But developing something for the community.
And you're out, Castro, do me a favor and explain that you are from out of Los Angeles and you've got some, you know, the background that you're from. And again, just a few minutes.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm from San Diego, born and raised, and I'm out here today. And you know, that's right above Tijuana. But I'm basically, okay, I'm an artist. That's my gift. I've always been an artist. I'm a working man, been a laborer, and been a telemarketer, been on both sides of the paradigm as far as work is considered, and with experience. And I was a GATE student in elementary school. I took that test, got like 90 something on it, you know what I mean? But I never took that route in education, which caused me ultimately to be flunked out of school, not for grades, which sucked anyway, because I didn't do homework. I was like, you know what I mean, active working. I actually had jobs when I was a kid, and then, but so working, you know, I was raised from a single mother household, you know what I mean? I have 3 sisters that I didn't grow up with, and they're all way older. And I have nieces that, you know what I mean? I have like grand nephews and nieces. It's crazy. It's crazy because I'm young. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I have all this family that's like I'm older. They call me uncle, but they ain't only a few younger years than me. But I'm young, but I have an old soul. I've been through a lot because I've been the man of the house since I was born. You know what I'm saying? So that being said, you know what I mean? No, that being said, all right. It's just try unity.